If you haven't noticed, Emma and I have been doing some more videos on Jill Stein and her policy positions. You're not going to see her in the debate. You're not going to see Gary Johnson in the debate. So I thought it's important to give you more details on her policy. I wanted to get into her foreign policy because I think that's one of the things that helps her stand out. She is very much like Rand Paul when Rand Paul was actually, being Rand Paul. Rand Paul kind of shifted over to being more traditional Republican during the primary to win votes. But Jill Stein is very much simpatico with the progressive movement. We need to stop trying to build countries up overseas. We need to focus on ourselves. We need to stop selling weapons where they're getting all around the world because they're getting in the hands of terrorists. So, Jill Stein, peace and human rights. Establish a foreign policy based on diplomacy, international law, human rights, and nonviolent support for democratic movements around the world. Wow. So basically you hear the words diplomacy, international law, and human rights, something that the United States has shit on and not really engaged in, human rights and diplomacy around the world. I'd say ever since Ronald Reagan, probably before that, we know about Vietnam. She wants to cut military spending by 50% and close the over 700 foreign military bases. She wants to ensure a just transition that replaces reductions in military jobs with jobs in renewable energy, transportation, and green infrastructure development. So we all know that the United States military is larger and costs more than I think the next 10 countries combined, in terms of the next biggest 10 countries' militaries combined. But all we hear from Republicans, Obama's gutted our military. We need to build up the military. Trump has said we need to build up the military. Jill Stein, I mean, people either love her or think she's nuts. She wants to cut it by 50%. You cut it by 50%, you know what? We'll still have the strongest military in the world. And like she says, a lot of the savings from that could go to jobs in renewable energy, transportation, and a green infrastructure. She goes on to say she wants to stop U.S. financial and military support to human rights abusers. Barring substantial changes in their policies, this would include Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Egypt. If you don't know, we just signed a deal to give Israel $38 billion over the next, I believe it's 10 years. Let me check. Yeah, U.S. finalizes deal to give Israel $38 billion in military aid. So Jill Stein wants to stop giving, billions and billions of dollars to countries like Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, where she says they're human rights abusers. She's been very strong against Israel and their settlements and what she believes is human rights violations against the Palestinians. She wants to end the U.S. role as the world's arms supplier. So in an interview with me and elsewhere, she has said day one she would put a halt to weapon sales around the world because they just get into the hands of ISIS and other rebel groups. So she wants a weapons embargo. That's one of her big policies. She wants to freeze the bank accounts of countries that are funding terrorism, including the Saudi royal family. This is something President Obama and Hillary Clinton actually did early before the Iran deal. They froze a lot of the Iranian bank accounts. That was part of the sanctions. And it crippled their economy. So Jill Stein is saying she wants to go beyond just Iran and do that for a lot of the countries funding terrorism. Saudi Arabia would be one of the biggest ones. She wants U.S. policy regarding Israel and Palestine must be revisited to prioritize international law, peace, and human rights for all people, no matter their religion or nationality, and U.S. policies that have supported the worst tendencies of the Israeli government in its treatment of the people of Palestine. So obviously, Israel, Palestine, it's been a conflict that seems to never end. Bernie Sanders was fairly brave during the primary, speaking out against human rights violations against Gaza during the Gaza war last year by Israel. That's kind of a sacred cow of American government, not to piss on Israel. Jill Stein, basically says we need to stop this philosophy that Israel's super duper awesome and never does wrong. So she would be an activist president for Palestinian human rights. She wants to restore the National Guard as the centerpiece of our defense. She wants to ban the use of drone aircraft for assassination, bombing, and other offensive purposes. Obviously, drone warfare has skyrocketed under President Obama, and by extension has killed many, I mean, at this point, who knows, thousands and thousands of innocent civilian lives around the country. Wonder why they want to kill us after the fact. End the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, withdrawing troops and military contractors. The wars technically in Iraq is over. In Afghanistan, not so much, but we still have a very huge proponent of soldiers in Afghanistan and special advisors in Iraq. She wants to lead on global nuclear disarmament, which the Iran deal is supposed to do, but nobody's kidding anybody by thinking the U.S. or Iran is really shrinking their U.S. stockpile. Rejoin the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, which the U.S. dropped out of in 2002 when it installed missiles and missile bases in Turkey, Romania, and Poland. She wants to agree to Russia's proposal to jointly reduce U.S. and Russian nuclear arsenals to 1,000 nuclear weapons each. Also call for all countries to the table to negotiate a treaty for the complete elimination of nuclear weapons. On this, I gotta call naivete. I mean, you can't trust Vladimir Putin and a lot of these people to shrink their nuclear stockpile unless you're there while they are decimating and destroying these nuclear stockpiles. I would have a hard time believing it. She wants to support Russia and China's joint effort to open negotiations on a treaty to ban weapons in space. She wants to pledge to end any further laboratory or subcritical nuclear tests at the Nevada and Novaya Zemlya test sites and end all nuclear weapons research, design, and modernization at the weapons laboratories. And she says the U.S. must take the lead in nuclear disarmament by itself starting to disarm. We should create a nuclear-free zone in the Middle East region and require all nations in the area to join. It doesn't say it here, but that she's probably also talking about nuclear power plants. The United States has several of them. Some towns and cities, their whole economy is based on these nuclear power plants. There's actually a story in, I believe, the Cleveland area that a viewer told me about. Wisconsin. A Wisconsin town where a nuclear power plant was closed in 2012, and the economy has been decimated. So obviously, ending nuclear power and nuclear testing could have great ramifications for peace and diplomacy, but there's also economic effects. So essentially, if you're looking at Jill Stein, she is an isolationist. She believes in diplomacy. She believes in peace, not through strength, but peace through diplomacy and human rights, which has not been American policy for a very, very long time, if it ever was. So she is, kind of a rare breed in a big swamp. Again, if I'm keeping it real, Jill Stein is polling at 2-3%. She's not going to be in the debates. She's not going to become the president. I'm sorry to tell you guys. But I still think it's important to get her policy ideas out into the discussion since this undemocratic commission decides who is allowed to debate and who doesn't.